Let's begin. All right, just a quick call to order. This is the Portland Utility Board meeting. This is a meeting of community volunteers tasked to advise council on items related to the Water Bureau and Bureau of Environmental Services. I'm gonna do a brief call to order, and then I'll pass it over to Amy to do some housekeeping about how we're gonna run this meeting, and then a commitment to our vision statement. So under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is being recorded. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Take it away. Oh, here we are back. And also for me, our wonderful value statement. I love reading this. PUB believes and acts upon anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with PUB, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means stepping up as a community when there is wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. So putting our principles into action, this means speak up and speak out. Each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board. And we focus on the impacted individual or population, and we condemn the conduct, not the person. These guidelines are intended to guide the conduct at our meetings. They're not intended to restrict anyone's right to speak or compel anyone to speak in a particular way. For the full PUB beliefs, values, and anti-racist principles, please check out the link below, portland.gov/pub/governing documents. Woo, love reading that. Okay, take it away, Amy.
Thank you, Dory. I will just quickly run through our meeting guidelines. Please, when you're communicating during the meeting, state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, state the name of the person you're addressing or state that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by the hosts, which are the two PUB staff and the lead facilitator, Dory. Please limit any comments through the chat box to technical and logistical issues, signing up for public comment, asking for assistance, or to remind us if you've been waiting to speak and haven't been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. The co-hosts may lower your hand once you begin speaking just to keep the flow moving. During the public comment periods, the public can raise their hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. The videos may be turned to the board, presenters, and facilitators when speaking. It's if desired, not required. Other members of the public and others participating should leave the videos off. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Members of the public will be muted except when giving public comment. If using a phone, press *6 to mute or unmute. Public comment, as I mentioned, will be taken during the comment period early in the meeting. Sign up through the chat with PUB staff, Eliza or myself, or raise your hand during the comment period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. This meeting is being recorded. I'll pass it back to Dory.
Thank you, Amy. All right, today's agenda, we have our call to order. We already did that. We're going to do some disclosure communications, ask public comment. Then the bureaus are going to provide us an update on their work to address climate change. Then we're going to get into the rate hearing, right? And then towards the end, updates on the Water Bureau's plan to resume collections. That was quite the discussion last time. So we're going to circle back to where we left off. And if time permits, announcements and next meeting topics, and then you will adjourn to a beautiful evening. You may notice before we get into disclosure communications that my camera is off, and that is because Zoom no longer offers the cool background option. And until they do, you're not going to see my face because my messy house does exist. So that's my little petition. All right, disclosure of communications. Anyone like to disclose communications they've had? And right off the bat, in first place, Teresa, go on ahead.
I really like the way you facilitate, Dory. I have my usual communications with my other board members at DPAVE, and one of them is a BES employee.
Thank you, Teresa. All right, we got Heidi. Go on ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, Heidi Bullock here. I went on a Linton walking tour yesterday with a couple of BES staff. It was all in relations to the Portland Harbor Superfund site and its community involvement.
Nice. Thank you, Heidi. All right, anyone else? Any other hands raised? Looking at the comments, looking at the participant list. Oh, Tom, go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, I hit the wrong thing. I hit clapping instead of raising my hand. Anyway, I'm sorry. So I had some contact with members of the design team for the Water Bureau working on the Bull Run filtration site. This was in regard to me offering them information about EcoRoof design. And that was the intent of the meeting. I also contacted actually Don Uchiyama at BES and offered the same pro bono type information to them if they were interested in looking at alternatives that would be helping to save money on those particular EcoRoof designed items.
Hey, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Heidi, I see you have your hand raised. Go on ahead.
Yes, I apologize. I need one more disclosure. I also met with the BES staff regarding some upcoming or an upcoming position opening. And so it was just more of a discussion on that position and how best to do outreach and the like. So I want to make sure I disclose that as well. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Heidi. It's very transparent of you. I feel like this space can almost be like a confessional at a church. I don't know. I want to pursue more like how much do we need to actually disclose? So I'll look into that for all of us. Okay, any other disclosures that people want to put forth? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being super transparent. You guys are the best. All right, we're in public comment. Before I look at the participant list, Amy and Eliza, have you received any requests for public comment or a note or communication to you to provide public comment at this space and time?
This is Amy. I have not received any.
Okay,
Eliza says me neither.
all right. I'm not seeing anyone else or any community members raising their hand. I know that in the past, it's so difficult capturing this on Zoom because a lot of people have technical difficulties. Off the bat right now, I'm going to tell you guys I'm having issues with my internet. And so I hope I don't fall off the call, but in the event that I do or you don't hear from me, that's why. Hearing no one and not seeing any raised hands, I guess we're going to move on over to approving and reviewing the April 15th meeting minutes. So please, guys, take maybe 1 to 2 minutes, look over those. I'm going to be looking for hands or even just people unmuting saying, I need this to be changed, or this is something that I see that I'd like to be worded differently, whatever it is. So 2 minutes.
I have an item that I wanted to mention.
Go on ahead, Tom.
As you all know, well, maybe you know, I did not attend the last meeting. I missed it, but I watched or listened. I listened to the recording, and something that I noticed in the recording that I didn't see reflected in the minutes was a reference to in regard to the discussion about the Water Bureau budget, and Robin was bringing up information about how much the budget was, and it was relative to the context. But what I'm getting at is that in the minutes, it did not state the amount that I think Cecilia had mentioned was around $100 million for capital, not capital, for operating. And at least that's what I thought I heard, and I didn't see that reflected in the notes. And I thought it was kind of important because it was a confusing conversation and I wasn't even there. I was just listening to the recording of it, and it seems there still may be more clarification of that coming. So anyway, the amount of money that Cecilia had mentioned was not in the minutes.
This is
Mm.
Eliza, and I actually left it out precisely because it was confusing and I knew follow-up information was coming. And as part of the public record, we don't actually need that level of detail in minutes. And so in the minutes, I strive to keep them clear rather than documenting something that's not clear that I know we're going to be clarifying. But I'm happy to add something to it and or reference the clarifying document.
I'm okay with that. It's good to learn that that's how you do it. So now I know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eliza. Thank you, Tom. Anyone else have amendments, addendums, corrections, additions? Okay. All right.
So what Eliza, will do is when I make these final minutes, I'll actually reference forward-looking clarification that related to this meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, Eliza. Okay, hearing none or no other objections, minutes are accepted. Okay, let us move on and invite Water Bureau and BES. I know that there was some discussion prior to the meeting beginning about making sure that our hosts, our guests have presenting rights. So I will let Amy and Eliza get that set up. Meanwhile, I'd like to okay. Kavita, I see. Okay, great. We're looking at it. It looks wonderful. What an engaging presentation this is going to be. Everyone else seeing what I'm seeing? It's a climate change.
Sorry, yeah. You
Okay.
can see that, great. So I just wanted to see if our director, Gabe, wanted to say anything before I jump in here.
Thanks, Kavita. This is Gabe Salmer. Just that you're in for a treat. Kavita and Edward Campbell are here to answer your questions. Anything that you'd wanted to know about our climate program. I think we've got the best in the business at the Bureau. And so we'll take it from the water side first, but please feel free to use the chat or to just raise hands and ask your questions. It's a lot of information, but it is a lot of good information. And we're also happy to take questions afterwards and move through it that way as well.
Thank you, Director Sommer. We are excited. All right, take it away, Kavita.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Gabe, for that introduction. So hi, everyone. My name is Kavita Hein. Really pleased to be here today to share with you what the Portland Water Bureau is doing to prepare for climate change. I'm the Climate Resiliency Planning Program Manager at the Water Bureau, and I'm going to share with you today some of the core components of our climate change resilience planning work. I'm going to start by talking about the existing water system climate resilience that we have. I'll then share the climate change risks that we're planning and preparing for. I'll talk about our climate resiliency planning efforts, and then I'll end by describing how we have an important leadership role in limiting our carbon pollution and reducing our impact on climate change, and how this fits in with our equity commitments. So from the outset, I really want to start by highlighting that Portland's water system already has some significant existing climate resilience, thanks to careful forethought and planning. We have two high quality, reliable supply sources, the Bull Run watershed and the Columbia South Shore wellfield, which enable flexibility and provide long-term climate and supply resilience. And that availability of the secondary groundwater supply that we have really acts as an insurance policy to ensure that we can meet our customer needs in a variety of conditions and climate stressors if the supply from the Bull Run watershed is insufficient. And that will serve us well in a warmer future. I will also say that the rain-fed nature of the Bull Run reservoirs really actually makes them less vulnerable to warming than the snow-fed systems that we see in other parts of our region and across the West. So that's not to say that snow doesn't play an important role in our water supply. It contributes and it helps keep water temperatures cold. but the Bull Run reservoirs rely on spring and fall rainfall to fill and refill every year. So annual weather variability is still something that's very important to us that we track. From a broader perspective, we have observed decreasing water demand in the Portland service area. Both per capita and total demand has been decreasing, and those trends are expected to persist. So the reason we've seen these trends is because despite population growth, we've seen increased water use efficiency from our customers. We have seen changes to Portland land use, and we've also lost some wholesale customers in recent years, and we're anticipating losing a couple more wholesale customers. So we'll be serving less population overall in the coming years. Because of all these reasons, the long-term water supply modeling and planning we've done that factors in climate change does not indicate a need for additional water supplies or water reuse strategies beyond the water supplies I've already described. However, we have still developed a toolbox of actions to address a range of future water needs. And depending on how circumstances unfold, we may need to respond to climate stressors, economic changes, population changes, and so forth. And so we are monitoring how conditions change over time, and we will pull from that toolbox of actions if necessary, and if we need to change course, depending on what circumstances are. So we're doing a lot to build this existing water system resilience, but we're also preparing for emerging climate change risks and disruptions. Recent years have given us a preview of future climate stressors in the Northwest and our local area. We have seen drought events such as in 2015 and 2018, which have affected our water supplies, including in those years requiring us to pump significant amounts of groundwater to meet customer needs. We have experienced extreme heat wave events. Portland has seen the most number of days above 90 degrees Fahrenheit in recent years and decades. Of course, we've experienced significant wildfire events that have been precipitated by hot and dry conditions. And some of those fires have even threatened the Bull Run watershed. And we have experience associated with those fire events, air quality hazards such as wildfire smoke waves. Both smoke waves and heat waves affect the vulnerability, affect our vulnerable populations in our communities, and also the outdoor workforce that helps keep our water supply moving and getting to our customers in the Water Bureau. We've also observed in recent years anomalous, unusual weather systems that have set up over the region that have led to many of these events. So this is the type of preview of common conditions that will become more common in a warmer climate. And Bull Run has already been experiencing some of these changes itself. We have seen maximum and minimum air temperatures increase 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit since the early 1900s. Bull Run water temperatures have also increased annually, as well as higher increases being observed in the summer months. And we have observed a statistically significant decrease in Bull Run summer stream flows over the past 40 to 50 years. This graphic shows the main stem Bull Run river gauge and the summer stream flows. And while we see year-to-year variability, of course, the overall trend is declining. And this trend is being observed in other locations in the Bull Run as well. So we're already seeing the signal of climate warming in our watershed. We view at the Water Bureau climate change as a risk multiplier. As I've just mentioned, we're concerned about lower summer stream flows, a trend we've already observed, and the implications for earlier and longer reservoir drawdown. We're planning for heavier winter storms with increased flooding and turbidity risk in the Bull Run. We're concerned about higher water temperatures continuing to rise with warmer air temperatures. This is a problem because we manage cold water in the lower Bull Run River under our habitat conservation plan for threatened salmonids. And we also find it more challenging to treat warmer drinking water in our distribution system. We're concerned about health and safety impacts to outdoor workers from heat events and smoke waves, as well as extreme heat impacts to our electrical and mechanical infrastructure and equipment. We are concerned about infrastructure damage from flooding and landslides, not just in the Bull Run watershed, but also along with some of other of our facilities, including the Columbia South Shore Wellfield along the Columbia River. And we're prepared for a greater risk of wildfire impact in the Bull Run watershed, as we've been warned in recent years. Those hot and dry conditions are a real precipitating factor for those types of catastrophic wildfire events. So we're really preparing for a range of climate change impacts and stressors. The good news is that we've taken a lot of effort over the years to prepare and plan in a more robust way to make us able to respond to and adapt to these changes. I have posted the URL here that just to let you know that we do have a web page which describes our climate resilience work if you're interested in finding out more and accessing additional resources. But I'll just tell you a little bit about our climate change resilience efforts and a little bit about our journey as a utility on preparing for climate change. So starting on the far left here, we began planning for climate impacts to our water supply in the late 1990s, which is actually pretty early on for a water utility to have been integrating climate change into water resource planning. We then started building institutional capacity for climate assessment with leading experts and scientists to really understand the science and how it impacts our system. We then started developing specific tools for adaptive climate planning over the years, so we can actually use those tools for water supply planning in our own utility and not outsource all of this expertise, but actually build that expertise internally. We have more recently evolved thinking about multiple climate risks beyond water supply. As I showed you, that spectrum of climate risks we are planning for includes water supply impacts, water quality impacts, impacts to our infrastructure, and of course, our most important asset, our workforce. And today, climate change is a Bureau priority embedded in our strategic plan and long-range planning. A cornerstone of our climate resilience journey and climate resiliency planning efforts has been our leadership and membership in the Water Utility Climate Alliance, or WUCA, as it's known. This is a group of 12 water utilities nationally that collaboratively work together to advance water sector climate change adaptation strategies and solutions. These utilities collectively serve 50 million drinking water customers, and we have been very fortunate to be part of this network of peers. By being a member of WUCA, we can leverage resources from around the country on best practices and lessons learned that we can then apply here at home in Portland. We are currently vice chair of this group, and we will be the chair of WUCA next year for a 2-year term. Some of the ways that WUCA has helped us really expand our climate resilience ability and adaptive capacity has been our role in helping to co-develop and host climate resilience trainings with WUCA, including in Portland, where we've been able to invite our own staff as well as staff from peer utilities like the Bureau of Environmental Services, Seattle Public Utilities, who's a member of WUCA, and Tacoma Water, to learn from experts how to use climate science in water resource planning and better build skills in those areas. We've also worked with WUCA to develop practical examples of climate adaptation in engineering. So we've developed case studies to show our engineers here in Portland how our peers are integrating climate change into engineering projects so we can replicate similar types of efforts. Recently, we completed an extreme heat study with WUCA, where Portland was one of 5 case study cities, where we looked at changing extreme heat waves in the future with climate change and assessed the impacts to our outdoor workers and infrastructure from extreme heat wave conditions. And that study helped us identify heat resilient strategies that we can operationalize to reduce the risk of exposure and mitigate the impacts of extreme heat. This study really helped us take a deeper dive into understanding the inequity of climate impacts within our own workforce. Many of our BIPOC employees work out in the field and are more exposed to extreme weather and climate related events. We've also spent many years partnering with climate science experts and research institutions to develop actionable climate science, that is climate science that can be directly applied in water resource planning. This has included partnerships and collaborations with Portland State University here in Portland to assess, for example, changing storm and dry weather systems over the Bull Run watershed, how those could change with climate change and implications for water supply. We've also partnered with Oregon State University, University of Washington, University of Idaho to develop climate model projections for the Bull Run watershed and hydrologic modeling tools so we can simulate future stream flows. We've also had the opportunity in engaging with climate scientists and through our role in the Water Utility Climate Alliance to provide input and influence national level assessments and reports, including the National Climate Assessment. We have then taken those climate science modeling tools that we've developed with our research partners and integrated them into our long-term water resource planning. We, for example, developed scenarios of future water reservoir storage in the Bull Run watershed using climate modeling tools that we've integrated into our state mandated supply system water master planning. And we are planning for a variety of water supply conditions in a warmer climate. Shifting gears a little bit, in addition to using data and tools, we're also collaborating and coordinating on climate resilience across city bureaus. And one of the most fruitful partnerships that we have had in the city of Portland is with the Bureau of Environmental Services. We have collaborated with BES on climate resilience work, including involving BES in our WUCA climate resilience trainings. We've done climate change scenario planning exercises with BES. And we have, for example, collaborated on the Portland State University research on extreme storm events and changes in rainfall over Portland. And there's many more examples. So we hope to continue to be able to have this fruitful partnership with BES on climate resilience in the near future. We have also been involved in helping develop strategies under the city's climate change preparation strategy with Multnomah County. That was part of the City Climate Action Plan back in 2014, 2015. And we've since then been part of a working group of city staff that have been engaged on climate change resilience efforts. And we currently facilitate some of those conversations. We also have been part of a resilient infrastructure planning exercise with the Portland State University Institute for Sustainable Solutions and city bureaus, where we planned for a couple of disaster events, a seismic event and a climate-related flood event on the Columbia River, and looked at how we could improve vulnerabilities of different bureaus to respond and recover from these events so we can be a more resilient city. So I'm going to shift gears now. I've talked a lot about the climate resilience work, what we're doing to plan and prepare for climate change, but a really important strategy is to reduce our carbon pollution and mitigate climate change impacts. And this is important for two reasons. One is to help meet our equity commitments, and the other is because by avoiding those impacts in the future, reducing those impacts, we can avoid costs in the future to what we will have to do to prepare and respond. We recognize that BIPOC and historically marginalized communities are most harmed by climate warming. And so reducing local utility carbon emissions contributes to racial equity and environmental justice. And so we see this as an intergenerational obligation, and the Water Bureau has this role to play as a steward of natural resources in the community of Portland. This is a real opportunity for Water Bureau to show its climate leadership to our community by taking action on climate change. As such, we have been tracking and measuring our greenhouse gas emissions and reporting on these since 2007. We have publicized our carbon footprint reports on our website since 2007, tracking our fuel, electricity, and natural gas use. There's the URL if you want to access our reports and data. And this has helped us measure what is happening, whether we've seen declining trends in emissions, and also what measures we can put in place to further reduce emissions. And we have done a lot to take our contribution to climate change seriously and reduce the impact. We have implemented efforts, for example, in installing energy efficiency measures in our facilities. Our recent Hannah Mason pump station upgrade obtains the highest amount of Energy Trust of Oregon energy incentives because of the features in that project. We've also directly generated renewable energy from on-site micro hydro and solar facilities that the Water Bureau owns. And then whatever we don't generate in renewable energy, we purchase. And as required by city policy, we purchase renewable energy certificates every year to offset our electricity use. But in addition to that, we're trying to go above and beyond and actually directly source renewable energy from solar solar and wind facilities directly. So in addition to renewable energy and efficiency measures, we're also thinking about strategies to reduce the impact of our fleet and improve fleet efficiency. This includes electrifying some of our fleet and reducing emissions by transitioning to hybrids. We were the first bureau to pilot the city's new social cost of carbon in a business case analysis for an electric vehicle charging infrastructure project. And we're able to evaluate how we could accrue savings in the long term by factoring in the social cost of carbon now. And then finally, we're aware of our supply chain emissions being a big source, the biggest source of our carbon emissions. And the big portion of that is from our concrete and our construction projects. So we need to be and are looking at opportunities to implement low carbon solutions and low carbon concrete to reduce those emissions. So while we're doing a lot to reduce our impact on climate change and help manage the climate crisis, there is still more we could be doing. And so I want to end by just highlighting some climate action opportunities that the Water Bureau could be taking in the near future to further show our leadership of this issue. So that includes setting a goal to reduce operational carbon emissions 50% by 2030, which would help meet the goals of the city's climate emergency declaration. We should also be increasing our direct sourcing of renewable energy. As I said, we already purchased 100% renewable energy certificates, but we should be reducing our reliance on those and directly sourcing our electrons from those renewable facilities. And that includes for our new filtration facility. When that comes online, it will increase the energy load of our operations. And then we have opportunities to increase fleet vehicle electrification, including installing electric charging infrastructure and equipment. And finally, I think there's a real opportunity to further integrate the social cost of carbon in more of our capital projects and consider climate change more systemically in those capital projects. So with that, I'm going to end on this and happy to take questions now or go ahead and hand it over to Nishant for his presentation. Thank you.
Kavita, thank you so much. Wow, it's a great stopping point. Pub members, any questions? Yeah, I see you're getting commendations in the chat and I got applause emoji. Well done. Any questions? Any concerns or feedback or just ideas that were brought to mind as she was speaking? I see lots of applause, lots of applause. Okay, we do have one hand raised. Tom, go on ahead.
Thank you. This is Tom Lipton. I just, I really appreciate your presentation. That was really well done. And the only thing that struck me that I'm wondering about is the relationship of climate, if there is any relationship, to the issue of the cryptosporidium that is the catalyst for building the filtration plant, or at least one of them. So is there, in talking to different people at the Water Bureau, it appears from what I could gather that there isn't a known source of the cryptosporidium other than the fact that it's somewhere in the Bull Run watershed because it's getting into that Bull Run water. So are you still looking at the cryptosporidium and trying to find the source and or relationship of whether climate is a contributing factor to the fact that all of a sudden a few years ago we have detects of cryptosporidium? So just a little bit about the connections, if there are any.
Yeah, I mean, I would not say, thank you for your question. I would not say that that is the primary driver of our cryptosporidium efforts in the filtration facility. Of course, there, as you say, we acknowledge that there's cryptosporidium in the water system, in the watershed. And so we haven't identified a link with climate change. I also want to give an opportunity for our resource planning director, Edward Campbell, to say something if he has a comment on this.
The only thing I would add, Kavita, I think that's a very good answer. Tom, good to see you again. In regards to cryptosporidium, it's basically a protozoan that is omnipresent in mammals in terms of their digestive tracts. And so we've always known, and we've had detections of cryptosporidium in the watershed going well back. We just didn't have lots of detections of cryptosporidium. And so clearly there is something different that has happened over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of the quantities of cryptosporidium that we're detecting. We do not have evidence that that is climate related as of yet, but I'm not ruling that out either at this stage. But we may find evidence that helps us understand that better, or we may not. It will, that is yet to be determined. So hopefully that's helpful. I know that's not definitive, but that's what we know at this time.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm gonna do Kaliska and then Robin. So Kaliska, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. That was a great presentation. I'm pretty excited about your guys' efforts on this. I guess one question, and they might be unrelated, so excuse my ignorance on this, but are you guys in communication with the Portland Clean Energy Fund on any of the efforts that they are doing for their investment into, clean construction, and I think forwarding, BIPOC contractors? And I was just wondering if you guys were in conversation with them as well.
So yeah, we're aware of the great efforts of the PCF-EF, and the Bureau of Planning Sustainability, as you probably know, leads that work. A lot of it is investing in community projects. So we're not directly involved in any of those projects, but anything that can help our city reduce its climate emissions, carbon emissions, is going to help us avoid costs down the road. And so we are very supportive of that work, and it complements the work we're doing internally with our operations. Eddie, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, tracking them closely.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Robin.
Hi, yeah, this is Robin, one of the pub members. Thank you for the presentation, specifically because I joined pub because of my interests in what the city was going to do to address climate change, and it was the reason why I'm seeking out my current degree path. So I appreciate that the Bureau, that this is very important to the Bureau. And so I see that we currently have citywide plans. But I was wondering what the Portland Water Bureau is specifically doing to address communities that are already seeing climate extremes, specifically in East Portland. When we talk about climate change, I feel like we generalize it to when it's coming in the future. But there have actually been studies, even 2020, the Oregon Live, the Oregonian reported that historically racist housing policies were actually exacerbating climate change effects in low-income Portland neighborhoods, and that out of like multiple studies throughout the United States, NPR actually reported that Portland, Oregon had the largest range in temperature between neighborhoods compared to red line districts, and that was like up. Some neighborhoods can be essentially up to almost 13 degrees hotter, and that's that's currently. And so when I think about climate change, I'm definitely thinking about what the plan is from 10 years from now. But I very much want to bring the Bureau into thinking we already have communities throughout Portland that are seeing extremes. Portland is already being reported to have climate extremes, and what is the Bureau doing specifically to perhaps localize? Like we have city plans, but do we have specific neighborhood plans, areas in the city that we are putting like extra funding towards because we recognize that they're already showing that they are being affected by climate extremes?
Okay, yes, this is a big challenge. I probably won't be able to get to all components of your question, but it's a great question. So thank you for that. So hopefully I elucidated in my presentation that we already are tracking these impacts within our system and beyond. So we already know that climate change is happening, and there's more to come, right? So one of the biggest things that we can do to meet our equity commitments is reduce our impact on the climate so that that harm is reduced down the road. However, we are seeing these changes now, and they have been occurring for a while, as you say. And so we do have this recognition of the historical oppression and inequities we've seen in these communities. For example, the heat vulnerability work that you mentioned is something we've been closely tracking with Portland State University for many years before it became national news. And we're aware of that dichotomy in East Portland and so forth of the heat index and the urban heat island effect. So a few things we're doing in addition to reducing our emissions, for example, is by electrifying and having a cleaner fleet of vehicles, we can actually reduce local pollutants and ground level ozone, which could benefit communities in more vulnerable and marginalized populations, and for example, parts of the East Portland. We are educating and supporting communities on storing emergency water supplies because we recognize a lot of people feel and experience climate change through water challenges. So storing emergency water supplies in the event of potential disruptions, which could become more likely in a warmer climate, right? And then we're contributing to the water security of lower income community members by expanding our financial assistance program in partnership with community-based organizations. You've probably heard about some of that work already through the pub. And then we're doing this evaluation within our own workforce because many of our employees are in the communities that you're talking about, and we want to make sure that we address those inequities within our our own workforce. So that's just an example of some of the things that we're doing and acknowledging this is an issue where more work is definitely needed.
Thank you so much, Robin, and thank you, Kavita, for that response. Robin shared with the group or with me some really great articles and links to reference the points of her question. And so I'm just going to post them in the chat. They are great articles to read. I encourage everyone to check them out. Before Kavita continues on or with her presentation, I just want to check to see if there are any other questions or comments. Okay. I see one hand up. Tom, go on ahead.
Just a quick question from what was just mentioned. I'm curious, are the Mount Tabor reservoirs, are those part of a backup system should it be needed in some way or other, or are they purely decorative?
Yeah, now they're not part of our system anymore. They're decorative historical preservation reservoirs. And so the most important form of redundancy and climate resilience that we have is the presence and availability of that secondary groundwater supply. Those groundwater aquifers along the Columbia River are truly our insurance policy to plan and prepare for unanticipated and extreme events in the future.
So if something happened in terms of the surrounding area of the Mount Tabor reservoirs, there's no way that you could tap into those to use them for an emergency. Is that correct? Is that
Oh,
You would not want to do that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to do that, Tom. The water that's stored in those reservoirs, because it's no longer circulating, the very poor water quality. Only under the most extreme circumstances would we be looking at sources of water that have that level of poor water quality.
Okay, well, Eddie, so does that mean then that those reservoirs under an extreme situation might be tapped into in some way to, is that what is that a correct understanding of what you just said?
Only in the same way that we would tap other water sources in the city, like, ponds at Laurelhurst, any sort of standing water that someone was going to use for water purposes, but there's no plumbing that would connect that water into our water distribution system.
Right, yeah, not connecting. Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, as I thought I heard ponds. Wow, so that'd be like if all of the water and the Willamette and the Columbia, like Godzilla drank it all up, and this is what we have left, right?
Yeah, it would be the last resort for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, sorry, Kavita, go on ahead, continue on.
I'm actually going to hand it over to my partner and colleague, Nishant, to talk about what BES is doing, if that's all right with everyone. Give him enough time to do that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome, Nishant, and thank you, Kavita.
Thank you all, and thank you, Kavita. Let's see, I'm just going to share my screen here, and if you can let me know. Let's see. You can see the slideshow all right?
Yes, it looks
All
great.
right.
Working for Clean Rivers. Can't wait.
Okay, well, it's always hard to go after Kavita because it's like asking the local band to play on stage after Zeppelin just rocked it. So I'll do my best, but thank you again for just setting up such a great discussion here, Kavita. So my name is Nishant Parulakar. I'm a civil engineer at BES. I lead our resiliency team, which focuses on seismic and climate resiliency planning for our bureau. Just a quick overview of our presentation. I want to talk about our assets and services and how they might be impacted by various climate risks, but then also talk about how those climate risks impact our communities and how our services relate to those impacts. I want to review a little bit about our resiliency master plan, which we completed in 2019, and then talk about what's in our toolbox for mitigation and adaptation, and then who we collaborate with to stay apprised on climate change work. And then also, what is the role of equity and climate justice in our resiliency work? As many of you know, we have a wide variety of assets that serve many different communities. So when we think about climate risks, in one sense, we're really thinking about How must we adapt our work in technical ways for the future? Technical being these types of assets we directly work with. But we also need to think about how our communities experience our work. And so, we work in these technical boxes on the upper left, but, the communities kind of experience our work in different ways. And so we need to think about how can we help that experience improve as climate changes? And then how can we serve communities to help them become more climate resilient, acknowledging that different communities, especially those of lower income or those communities of color, are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And so I was just going to share some of the data that we look at in our resiliency planning process, and I'll just try to make this fast. That on this map on the left, this is an urban heat island map, showed with the darker red areas being areas experiencing more of that urban heat during the summers, and this economically disadvantaged map with the darker purple areas being more disadvantaged. And there's, east of Portland, and this came up in the question before, we can see this overlap, this intersectionality of these frontline communities also being, more at risk to different climate risks. So, we have green infrastructure and natural systems that can address this type of risk. I think another success we've had that addresses this intersectionality is our Johnson Creek flood management work, where we all have capital work where we put project work in the ground that mitigated flood risk. But we also did this other work with the FEMA community rating system that advanced the city's insurance rating so that we lowered the cost of flood insurance for a lot of these frontline communities in the Johnson Creek flood system. So, we are able to help, with climate resiliency in multiple ways. And these are some of the stories and the dots that we connected in our resilience plan. And that plan, that has both climate and seismic components. I'm going to focus on the climate. We talk about our different services and ways to how to really map out that climate risk for our system, and highlighting, what is in our toolbox and what is most effective. We also shared the challenge of how to make decisions under uncertainty. And this goes back to something that Kavita highlighted in her talk. And we had the fortune of having her on our technical advisory committee to help us in that project. So we definitely benefited from her mind trust there. And then that plan also has a number of short-term and long-term actions that we identified. This is a graphic that actually comes from the plan. And what it lists is we have our typical BES services on the left side there. And we had a range of climate risks that our region is exposed to. And we talked with our subject matter experts. And, when looking at how sensitive our work is to various climate risks, we really found that a lot of our services are sensitive to flood and landslides. And then we also found that we have certain services that are sensitive to almost all the different climate risks. So when we talk about what we prioritize at looking at moving forward, you might see these types of services and risks at the forefront. But we also recognize that we have to consistently revisit the science, revisit with our subject matter experts, and then also stay in tune with the community to understand what it is that they're experiencing and what's a priority to them. Just a few simple takeaways from that report. Again, we are preparing for multiple futures. There are different climate risks and there's still uncertainty in there. And as we make that preparation, we know equity, delivering equitable service to our community is critical, and community engagement is really a strong component of that. And also that, we can't do it alone, just BES. We definitely need to coordinate with all our other infrastructure and planning bureaus in the city to make this successful for the region. And also the plan highlights how BES plays a role in both mitigation and adaptation goals for the city. So, one of the recommendations from that plan was to pursue better localized storm projection data. And we just fortunately did get some results back just within the last month. We had partnered with Gresham and Water Environment Services to contract with University of Washington's Climate Impact. And what they did was they took some of our historical precipitation data and they ran it through a number of global climate models to help us understand what are the potential projections of that data and of those precipitation scenarios into the future. So this graphic, for example, this is our 25-year 1 hour storm event. And I'll just try to simplify here. If we look at into the 2080s, if we have assets that are planned to last 60 years or longer, which we do, based on the range of what our existing model or existing design storm might look like in the future, we can't say for certain what exactly it will be, but we can say with some confidence that that storm might change by up to 30% increase in the future. So this gives us an idea, a little bit more confidence on how to plan for those assets. And so, what do we do with this information? So one aspect of it is we can take that projection data and we can put it into our hydraulic models. And those models tell us where we are at risk of surcharging our pipes in the streets, where we might get street flooding, or where we may have facilities that are prone to sewer backups. And so, as we map that climate risk looking into the future, we can start asking ourselves from that community perspective, where are those future climate risks creeping up? When might they show up first? When might they show up later? Are these frontline communities that are being impacted? Are these buildings that are important to the community? Are these emergency transportation routes, or are these medical facilities and fire stations? So, those projections can help us understand community impacts, which is important. And then we can also take that data, that climate risk data, and plug it into our asset management approach, which is an existing business process we have. And so what this might do is help us integrate our climate risk in a way that when we look at alternatives, we can find or help choose, what is the most cost-effective way to manage that future climate risk. And it also forces us to ask, how smart can we plan now so that we aren't pushing those costs towards the future generation. And this starts getting at intergenerational equity, and that these are, really challenging conversations. So this is a process, the charting that future risk and asset management, we're still figuring that out, but that's kind of the line of sight that's kind of emerging right now. And so we're in discussions at improving this. And so, talking a little bit about those alternatives and what are the mitigation and adaptation options we have, I want to talk a little bit about our typical gray infrastructure options. For bigger storms, we have the option of upsizing our pump stations or increasing the diameter of our pipelines for more capacity, building on-site storage. For floods, we can try flood-proof our facilities or, elevate certain equipment to get it out of flooding areas. And borrowing from that extreme heat study that Kavita pointed out and that we saw from WUCA, there's also value in changing the specifications of our mechanical and electrical equipment. They provided a great case study on why, having improved temperature ratings for those future summers where there'll be higher temperatures for longer periods of time, that'll improve the life cycle of our assets. So provides a better investment there. And also gets back to that workforce equity issue. So we also have field staff working in those higher temperature conditions. What can we do to address their safety? And I also want to highlight in that bottom right there, this is one of our staff, operational staff at the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant, and the role they play with their maintenance in extending our life. So there he's cleaning one of our dissolved oxygen sensors, and just doing that extends the life cycle of that asset, but it also gives us better information on what's happening at that plant, which means, we can make smarter choices about how many resources or how much energy we need to use in that treatment process. So, there are options related to great infrastructure for climate resiliency in so many ways. And I did want to highlight some of the great work that's happening out of the treatment plant. Basically, the city's waste streams go to the treatment plant, and we're converting those waste streams into energy, nutrients, and water. So we do talk about them in terms of value streams in many ways. There's an energy efficiency team out there. They are putting in high efficiency lighting and timers, high efficiency equipment to reduce the power consumption. They're also working on optimizing our operations to reduce the energy footprint there. And so we have a partnership with the Energy Trust of Oregon. We've already saved more than $255,000 in the first few years of that energy efficiency team's work. And then we also have energy recovery and reuse. And so I think the renewable natural gas program from within our resource recovery team is kind of this really stellar example of mitigation work for the city. 21,000 tons of emissions saved a year, while also providing revenue by partnering with Northwest Gas and reselling that gas. The next stage of this work involves developing fueling stations so that we can power some of our city fleet with that gas. So I just think this is a really, really cool project. And then just in terms of nutrient recovery, often biosolids will get sent to the landfill, but our team there has found ways to apply those biosolids elsewhere so that they provide these other benefits such as soil health and offsetting use of synthetic fertilizer. So a lot of great work going on at the treatment plant. And then what else is in our toolbox? So green infrastructure and natural systems, I think, is one of the places that BES really excels within the city. You can see a wide variety of those, of that type of work that we do. And this is a graphic from this agency in Europe, which I really like because, if you look at the bottom, you'll see resilience, climate change mitigation, and carbon management as some of the benefits of green infrastructure. But when you look at all the other line items there, you can see there's so many community benefits that come from it. And so I think this is definitely one of the low-hanging fruits, no regret solutions, because green infrastructure provides a lot of value to a lot of different types of risk for our communities. But I also acknowledge that when we go into a community, green infrastructure is one component as part of a lot of different types of city investment that can contribute to gentrification. And so we have to be aware of what anti-displacement plans we may want in place, or how we want to engage with that community sooner, so that we can kind of mitigate the negative effects that are associated with this. But still, given that there are so many benefits with green infrastructure, and I wanted to highlight another project where we have green infrastructure and natural systems. And this is the Crystal Springs Restoration Project. This is a good example where we had really strong community collaboration, 21 partners, including the Urban Native American community, the Grand Ronde Tribe, the Columbia Intertribal Fish Commission. The project, decreased stream temperatures by 3 degrees. It removed culverts and improved salmon access up this Willamette River tributary, and helped us create the first salmon sanctuary for the city. We leveraged $8 million of federal funding to do this project. And the project also helped us get a 2019 C40 Cities Bloomberg Philanthropies Award, or at least became a finalist. So just a lot of great work within this project. I think it resembles strongly what we're capable of in terms of providing climate resiliency for the city. And so, just getting us to this great point and still moving forward requires a lot of collaboration and support. We continue collaborating on getting good data. We have a flood modeling study underway right now to improve our understanding of the lower Willamette flooding zones. But we also just collaborate well within the city and with other practitioners. One example within the citywide climate preparation team, which with the Water Bureau, BPS, BDS, and other bureaus, we've talked about this the upcoming mitigation action plan, which will be updated. And then we're talking about what types of climate projects might be appropriate for that plan. And while it's important to have those projects lined up for FEMA purposes, having a healthy, robust plan also improves our bond ratings. And so, better bond ratings for our bureaus also helps our dollars go further in terms of investments that go into our community. So, this type of research and collaboration is very important. And I also want to say the other type of collaboration, not to be lost in all this, is just the collaboration we do with our local partners and city partners. And so, we have this knowledge exchange with local partners where we learn from them, and that helps us provide the equitable services they deserve. And so, we are members of the Tribal Relations Program. We integrate ITEC, the Indigenous, Traditional, Ecological, and Cultural Knowledge, into our wetlands enhancement projects. We also do a lot of outreach to teach science and climate change to youth of different communities through our Clean Rivers Education Program, through the Community Watershed Stewardship Program. And so, this is fundamental to our planning process. And as we went through our recent reorganization, we have a plan we have an opportunity right now to really improve how we do our planning and community engagement. So at BES right now, we're incorporating results-based accountability into our planning process. We're also becoming much more cognizant about that potential for displacement in projects, the bias within data that we use, the historical injustice that went into a community before we go in there and start engaging. So these are all good process improvements, and I think it's a long ways till we get there, but the steps are being taken, which I think is great. And we are also reaffirming that we want to better engage with community members, and we hope that we complete projects in a way that community members feel that the project was done with them and not to them. I think that's a good kind of a metric, I guess you could say, in how we want to do our work. And so just to round this out, as things change both in the climate world, but also in our communities and their needs, we also are adapting how we do our work, just not what is in our work. And so, I look forward to continuing to work with folks like Kavita and other climate experts within the city. And with that, I think I'll stop rambling here. And if there are any questions, I can take those. Thank you.
Not a ramble at all, but a cogently done presentation. Thank you, Nishant. Anyone have any questions? Are you getting applause emoji, applause emoji, applause emoji? Anyone have any questions for Nishant? Or comments or ideas that sparked or came to mind after hearing his portion of the presentation? Okay, Tom, go on ahead.
Thank you. That was a good presentation. Something that came to mind and I'm sorry, everybody. I feel like I'm always asking a question, but I'll make it quick. So in terms of green infrastructure, I thought it was interesting the comment that was made earlier about East Portland, and you did touch on that with regard to the conditions there. I'm of the understanding that BES has a policy of installing underground concrete perforated sumps in the East County area or East Portland area. And instead of using green infrastructure, using the Green Street stormwater planters. And it's been my observation, I happen to live in Southeast Portland, and just not far from where I live, a block away, there was a local improvement district project done on Southeast Mill Street. and 80th, and they installed sumps. And I'm kind of a green guy, and I looked at it and I thought, man, if I was designing this project, I could have used Green Street facilities in numerous places and not had to use any sumps. So is it a struggle that you're having within BES? And if I'm correct, that this policy of putting sumps in is preferred in the East County area versus putting in green streets? Can you speak to that?
I cannot, unfortunately. But what I can tell you is the trade-offs that alternatives consideration, a lot of things might come into play there. One might be, one aspect is definitely if there is a local community preference. I don't know if that discussion was had. Another option or another part of the discussion might be the operations and maintenance needs, and if there are trade-offs. If there's one that is more effective in managing that stormwater at a smaller footprint. So those are all and also, what are the local conditions and will that actually, is it more effective to do it with a sump versus other types of green infrastructure? So I don't know if there's an actual policy that sides one way or another. If there are any BES comrades that are on the call that know of it, welcome you to chime in. But I can always find out and I can get back to you and let you know if there is.
Yeah, I would like to know whether my understanding is accurate or not. And this particular case, all of those issues, I actually walked over and met some of the neighbors and I asked them, and they basically said they were never given a choice to go green, that they just took what the city gave them. Now I have to say, and I think this is something that BES and other bureaus do have a struggle, is that in this particular case, the lead agency is transportation. And so getting to transportation and getting them on board with doing green versus gray, and basically a sump is a gray infrastructure approach, I know is a challenge. And I just want you to know that at least this particular member of PUB really supports you if you have to go to the mat to try and say, okay, they do cost a little bit more to maintain, but we really need this green because of the climate issue as well as other issues, as you showed in your graphic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Inviting T-Bot to the boxing ring. Now, Nishant did ask for comrades at BES to come forward, so I'm not gonna let that ask become void. Comrades at BES, would you please speak? Anyone? Oh, Mr. Laurent, shall you go?
Hi, this is Brian, comrade and compañero. I thought that Nishant's answer was great. I think the footprint piece is a big piece, and then there's just so many factors, right? And then Tom's statement about who's the lead agency is also really important. So I think that, like, all the questions are out there. What went down in that particular project, that's a very specific thing probably. And I think that trend is, was just that we have a lot of UICs, or what Tom referred to as a underground sump, all over the east side, and that was the original strategy for how to manage stormwater, because those folks weren't getting the service. So I don't know, like, if there is a real policy, but I think that everybody kind of covered all the different factors that might influence any particular project. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, I see Robin and Teresa. Robin, did you have your hand raised first? Oh, I'm not sure. Is it all right if
I think so.
Okay, all right. Robin, go on ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the presentation and for taking our questions. I want to say that as a self-proclaimed environmental scientist, I'm really encouraged by the Bureau's holistic approach to addressing climate change. And I, of course, would like to note that we are a community board and that it is definitely your job to show us the best side of the Bureau of Environmental Services. So as the resilience team lead, would you tell us, in your professional opinion, where the Bureau is currently lacking in their work to address climate change at the Bureau?
That is a good question. Nishant, don't worry, you'll still have a job, okay? We support your career. Please answer as honestly as you possibly can.
Sure, thank you, Dory. I think one of the places that we could definitely improve is really understanding our climate risks better, just where they are in the city and what type of risks are. And risk can also have cascading impacts. And so, on the earthquake side that I work on, I think a lot about interdependency. So what is the failure in a system that I have to worry about and how that impacts somebody else, and they may not be aware of it, and vice versa. A place that I invested in, I think that's good, but somebody else hasn't taken the care to invest in their system and it fails, and all of a sudden I have to explain, this is no longer reliable or resilient. And I think something similar like that would apply in our climate risk analysis as well, as if when we start seeing infrastructure impacts and trying to tie them to other either other infrastructures or other elements in a community. And I kind of touched on that a little bit with our projections modeling. So for stress testing a system, okay, now we're seeing these impacts are impacting emergency transportation routes. We don't know where all the critical electrical substations are. So are we going to be flooding those, or flooding even access to getting the owners of that private utility, to put power back on for that local area? So I think we could improve more on understanding our various types of risks, including our river flooding risks, which I think historically we've had just not great data, and we're actively working on refining that to really understand, which households, which of our facilities are within various floodplains, and what we need to do to mitigate there. I hope that helps.
It did. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, Teresa, and then unfortunately, guys, I'm gonna have to cut the discussion short. And if you have any additional thoughts or questions, to email pub staff, and then they will relay it to our presenters. But for now, go on ahead, Teresa, close us out.
Hi, this is Teresa, voting member, and thank you again for the great presentation that you provided. My question is, recently we learned that BES has lost its tree program, which was one of the very apparent ways that BES was hoping to use green infrastructure to address climate change, especially climate heat and stormwater management. And now that the program is handed to the parks program, urban forestry program, is there any other ways or any other parts of how you would use other ways of green infrastructure to strengthen your climate mitigation and climate change strategies?
And Nishant, I'm going to jump in. I won't answer the question directly, but I do want to say that we have not handed our tree program over to parks. We are currently exploring what our options are, and we've pushed the pause button, I would say, but we are actively exploring what our options are. So we have not turned any resources, any employees, any money over to the Park Bureau. And we completely agree with you how important that program is for our connections to the community and broadening our contributions to green infrastructure. So just wanted to correct that, but maybe you could highlight the question again, and I'll hand it back to Nishant.
Okay, yeah. So thank you for answering that question. So it sounds like it's just on pause. So is there still any chance that the tree program will still be, is there any chance that will reverse back and still maintain with BES in the future, or
Well, we haven't made a final decision. We understand again how important the work is, and there are questions around overlapping services between bureaus. So we know we had a very robust community conversation last year, and we know that we need to reinvent the program. We know that we're not meeting all community needs. And so I think this idea of pausing is so that it can be reconfigured to be the most efficient delivery of government services and meet the community, most importantly, meet the community needs. So we're just asking for a little bit of time. We just hired a new program manager, and we are asking for just a little bit of space and grace to help figure out what the next step is going to be. But we are committed to investing in this and finding the best solution. So I didn't say, is there a chance that it will stay with the ES or won't go back? Absolutely, there's a chance. We have not decided yet what the best configuration is. And again, we haven't handed anything off. So it is with us. It stays with us. Yeah. Thank you.
This is Eliza. I would just quickly add that in the planning meeting that the co-chairs had with Bureau leadership just a few weeks ago, BES did indicate they just hired a program manager and suggested that they come to the pub with the update on tree program once that program manager kind of has some grounding and footing. So later in the summer.
Yeah, thank you for that, Eliza.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
All right. Go ahead, Teresa.
Sorry, I have another question, and I know you mentioned this a little bit already, Nishant, is can you elaborate a little bit more on the anticipated impacts on the communities of, like, if any of the systems does fail under so if any of the systems, the great infrastructure systems does fail under, climate change and, due to the risk of flooding and all that, can you elaborate more on what are some of the anticipated impacts that the community members might experience?
Sure. And so that, really depends on maybe what risk that specific scenario you're looking at. But one, Kavita had mentioned that this interbureau exercise, the resilient planning, resilient infrastructure planning exercise, RIPE, that Institute of Sustainable Solutions kind of led. One of the scenarios that we looked in there was a 500-year flooding event in Southeast Portland. And what was interesting there in that scenario was that we had, significant localized flooding that cut off emergency transportation routes that went into a community. So all the roads going in, the major roads were flooded, which isolated, fire stations, I think schools, and just a lot of critical community facilities there. And so that's one element where, you can have one impact, and then the natural hazard itself can kind of isolate a community. And, in that process, we don't know what else could happen. You could have, washouts of culverts in certain scenarios, and that washing out may also damage water lines. It kind of just really depends on the scenario, but you can start, there are trends, things that you kind of look that are infrastructure that are interdependent, and you kind of just have to explore it based on that specific scenario.
Okay. Thank you, Nishant. Thank you, Teresa. I had questions too about Dogami. I saw that they were on that list, and I know that's got to be a whole kind of relationship. But I will save my question, and I will have it be emailed to pub staff. Other than that, Nishant, Kavita, wow, amazing job, wonderful presentations. In fact, I'd love to have this meeting, this particular meeting kind of canonized on our website, because I know that community members would find this information so valuable and helpful. So thank you both, and stellar job on the presentation, and enjoyed by me and tons of all of our board, lots of clapping emojis all around. Okay, and just a reminder from Eliza, please send additional questions to pub staff. That's Amy and Eliza if you have questions about the presentation or more follow-up and ideas on that. So we do have some more kind of housekeeping business update type stuff to do. And I just also want to remind everyone that the presentation we had, this is a introductory conversation to an ongoing discussion that we will have at this board. So please don't think this is a one and done either, even though this was wonderful. Okay, so Amy, do you want to kind of set this up, frame this a little bit?
Thank you, Dory. This is Amy. So I will just run through this really quickly to maximize time. So part of what you see on the slide is just a refresher of where we're at with budget related items. Teresa did a great job providing verbal testimony at the work session. You all finalized a recommendation letter that was provided to all of council in April. Highlights of that letter were provided to the mayor and his staff by Director Kennard last month as well. The proposed budget was just released by the mayor. And for the most part, the bulk of the information was consistent with what was requested. The rate increases were put forward the same as what had been submitted by the bureaus. The one change that I've put in parentheses here is just to make you aware that some of the capital set aside funds, they did allocate some just over, I think, just over $400,000 for the ADA portions of the ADA transition plan for the Water Bureau for the changes to hydro parks to address ADA barriers, as well as the Powell Butte Reservoir. And then there also was the 5% general fund reduction to the maintenance services that get passed through to the Parks Bureau that are funded through general fund dollars for the Powell Butte nature park. So those are the only tangible changes since the last time we met. The next step is that there's a rate hearing on May 19th at 2 p.m. PUB is invited, as always, to provide testimony at the rate hearing. It really varies year to year as to whether PUB has attended that and provided verbal testimony, provided something additional in writing, or opted not to because their testimony is consistent with what's already been provided. So that really is the question that is before the PUB today, is whether there is interest in providing verbal and or written testimony at the rate hearing, which takes place in 2 weeks. If there is a decision to proceed and folks want to provide testimony, then there's a few things that need to happen. We need to talk about the content of that testimony. There need to be volunteers identified who are interested in 1 to 2 people of the board members interested in kind of helping formulate and turn that into testimony, and delegated with the authority to present that testimony to council at the rate hearing. So that is where we're at with budget, and that is what is before you.
Sounds good. Okay, PUB board members, you have heard the proposal put forth by Amy. Do we want to have one of our members come forth and provide additional testimony? And like I said, the additional testimony would be, I'm thinking if we have something new that we need to say, or if we want to further emphasize something. But with council, that's kind of a personality game. I try not to probe or poke when let's see, be diplomatic, Dory. They have a lot on their plate and they are always reviewing and assessing. And so acknowledging those burdens, I don't ever want to create an environment where I'm being like a pest, or our board to be seen as a pest. But if there's something we need to talk about or something new we need to present, I don't want to cut that opportunity short. So how are folks feeling about that?
This is Robin. The way that I'm feeling is I actually like the idea specifically because it allows us to be present at the meeting. I feel like it makes sense that the community board would say something, if not just for that emphasis. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting. I'm not sure if we have anything new to say, but I feel that by specifically having a pub member present and having them speak, that would add like a personal touch, as well as show not only the bureaus that we're currently doing oversight for, but also city council would show them that we take our jobs seriously, and we, I guess, intend to be heard.
Gotcha. Okay, good point, Robin. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, Julia, go on ahead, please.
I was just going to make this general comment as well for the whole group, which is that I think it also might be a good opportunity to put into the record our values and how we want those infused in all the work that we're doing and that the bureaus are doing. We've done some really good work on outlining those, and maybe that's how we could kind of express in our testimony the way in which the work that they're doing and the rates are being set are in alignment with those values. So I just think it might be a good chance for us to make a really values-based statement as an organization.
I love that idea.
Okay. See, thumbs up. Gabby, go on ahead.
No, yeah, I just wanted to support the last statement. I love that idea to be able to really like elaborate more and really solidify kind of the work that the bureaus and we've been doing on equity and how they're aligned. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I didn't know any better, it looks like I have some volunteers too. Amy, how can we proceed?
Well, of the 3 folks who spoke up, it would be great if 1 or 2 of you are interested in kind of helping craft what those talking points would be. And if I just got a message from Robin saying that she is willing to volunteer. So if there's anybody else on the board who wants to be the second voice to kind of finalize what the talking points would be, with the focus from what I've heard is really restating and providing an opportunity to share the values and how the current rates kind of line up with that and the work that the bureaus are doing. So I guess going once, if there's another volunteer who's interested. Julia?
Well, before I volunteer, I want to extend a very specific invitation to Gabby, because I think you were so instrumental in drafting those values. And I think it would be great to have, frankly, not just 2 white women giving the presentation, but I also understand that there's capacity or desire. Like, if you don't want to do it, that's totally fine. But I mean, I am willing to, but I want to make sure that Gabby, that the opportunity is very much there for you too, because you were so instrumental in developing those.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, Gabby played a very key role in drafting those values, as did Karen Spencer, who did an incredible heavyweight in putting those values together. So Gabby, do you have a response? Yes, no?
I hate to put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
And Karen Spencer, who did
Yeah.
an amazing job. Karen?
Yeah, I know Karen Spencer isn't here today.
Oh, she is. She's right there. Hello, Karen.
Hi. I definitely feel like I'm okay stepping back. I don't know, Karen, if you feel differently, but I think that like the process that we went through like kind of speaks for itself. So I'm okay letting me not be part of this part of it, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'll leave it to you, Karen, to see what you think.
I'm happy to be of support on this and help out in any way that I can in drafting the values and attending or speaking. So just happy to help out. Not to keep everybody on the line late. If we want to talk afterwards, I have a few minutes to do that too, to get our ducks in a row.
Thank you, Karen
Maybe
Spencer.
I could suggest, Story, that somebody, because we do want to, since you're delegating to somebody to speak on behalf of the board, I think it would be great for it to be a formal decision of the board.
Okay.
So if somebody could make a motion to delegate to Robin and one of the other volunteers to be coordinated with staff. So either Julia or Karen Spencer. And then we can coordinate offline and choose one or two of you to review the materials and finalize who's going to speak. And then we can take quick public comment if there is any, and delegate that to those voting members combined with staff.
Wonderful, Amy. Thank you for moving us forward. Okay, everybody, you heard Amy. Someone make a motion.
I would like
Wait,
to.
we have to, I would prefer if it's Karen in terms of the two people being Karen, because you did volunteer, Karen, yes? I want to make sure I heard you correctly.
I did volunteer. I did.
Wonderful. I would love for you to do it.
Okay, this is great. Okay. Who? I thought I heard a motion from Tom.
I would like to make the motion.
Wonderful.
That was just expressed by all the people who expressed it.
Oh, that's perfect. Does that work? What a wonderful shortcut. I'm going to remember that. Anyone second that emotion?
Second.
Second. Who's going to second the motion?
Karen Williams. Oh, Karen Williams second.
Okay, great. It's been seconded. Now, no. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness.
Public comment, if there is any, please raise your hand or speak up.
Okay.
All right, so call the vote to delegate to Robin and Karen Spencer. Those next.
All right. I will start. I want to also preface that Kaliska had to leave us early, and Rob is abstaining for the vote. He's here, but he has chosen to abstain for all votes that would happen at this meeting. He told me in advance. Okay, so moving down the line. Me, Dory Robinson, co-chair, I vote yes. Number 2, Karen Williams.
Karen Williams, co-chair, I vote yes.
Number 3, Teresa.
Voting member Teresa, I vote yes.
Number 4, Tom.
This is Tom Lipton. I vote yes.
Number 5, that's right, we dropped off. Okay, number 6, Gabby.
Yeah, this is Gabby voting yes. Super pumped. I know it's gonna be great.
Love that endorsement. Number 8, I think, because that 7 was Kaliska. Robin, go ahead.
This is Robin. I vote yes.
Number 9, Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Julia. I vote yes.
And number 10, the amazing number 10, Karen Spencer.
I vote yes.
Wonderful. Okay, a unanimous across the board motion accepted. Yay. Okay, we have that. Now, if you guys wouldn't mind staying an extra 2 to 5 minutes, just for some brief announcements. Okay, so we were going to do collections. I apologize. Water Bureau staff, BES staff are like, I came here to talk about collections, where hopefully we can get to you at the May 20th meeting. Thank you for your patience. This meeting went long, but it was wonderful. We learned a lot in this meeting. So hopefully we can get to that at the next meeting. Okay, co-chair positions. So I think this is known, but we have openings coming up, and in June, I'm going to see, well, I will be asking for volunteers for co-chairs to come up in June. And not for us to vote on the co-chair in June, but I'd like someone to try out being a co-facilitator at our next meeting. As you may know, both the 1-year and the 2-year co-chair positions will be open July 1st. The 2-year position is mine. The 1-year position was Karen's. Karen very graciously accepted stepping into this role interim until June. And we both had this discussion about wanting to make sure that people who are interested in a leadership opportunity on this board can step into it. There is, for Karen, it's not the case of not wanting to do this role. It really is wanting to invite in others to participate. And Karen, I hope I captured that correctly. Please correct me if I didn't. We'll also have upcoming, we'll have to, in June, we'll be recommending those future co-chairs to the commissioner in charge and the mayor, who will make the and so I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I see everyone on this board as a leader. You guys all have incredible skills, talents. You work well together. You're all collaborative. And so I see potential leadership in all of you. And so I really hope that this is something that, if it's tugging on your heart or on your mind, like, I want to maybe pursue this, to please do so. And when we have our co-facilitation opportunity come up in June, please, leap at the opportunity. So I just wanted to share that. Me, on the other hand, I will, my 2-year term is up. I'm not pursuing to apply to be on the board for next year. And I'm not pursuing to be co-chair again either. So in June, I'll be leaving the board. I thought I had made this announcement board-wide, but I don't think I have. And so if this is the first time I'm sharing it, my apologies, but I will be leaving in June. And so it's really, I really hope that folks will step into this role. Okay, any other updates that I wanted to share? Oh, there is this really cool community meeting that is on the horizon by a Water Bureau staff member, Joanne Johnson. And she is putting together this sort of intra-community large bureau engaging with community meeting. And she approached our pub staff and our pub leadership in wanting to engage with pub on what that community meeting could look like. So engaging with us in the planning phase, which is what we love on this board, right? We love being engaged. We love being initiated into a project in the planning phase, not responding to something after the fact. And so I thought this was a wonderful idea. Now, currently we have STEP CIP scheduled for the Thursday, May 20th meeting. But we receive regular updates or can receive regular updates from them going forward. And so I kind of wanted to ask you guys if you would feel comfortable with us tabling STEP CIP updates for the May 20th meeting, and instead adding in or inviting Joanne Johnson to come in and talk about this community meeting that she's creating, and how we can perhaps best inform what that community meeting looks like, and how the Bureau could do something that's really engaging for community. So that was my proposition. Of course, the May 20th meeting will also add in, if you could put that on there now, Amy or Eliza, add in the collections update that we didn't get to do today. But those were, that was an agenda topic. So I wanted to hear from you all if you would like to do that. Eliza has more information about what that community meeting is.
So
yeah, go ahead.
It's not a meeting. It's the Bureau is putting together a community engagement strategy, like a Bureau-wide community engagement strategy. And Joanne was going to various stakeholders early on, just as she's beginning to develop that strategy. And so she wanted to have an open-ended conversation with you all. And her timeframe was May, June, and the May 20th meeting looked like your best meeting in terms of openings.
Okay, so how are you guys feeling about that?
This is Karen Williams. I like the idea of that timing, and I like it because we ourselves are in the planning stages for some kind of community meeting, and it seems like it would be very timely and very informative for us to hear what the Water Bureau is developing. So I think the timing would be very good.
Good points. You're getting thumbs up. I agree. Okay, more thumbs up. So it looks like we're getting some consensus. Anyone else have any thoughts? Or I guess strong opinions on us tabling STEP CIP for the next meeting after the 20th? Okay, not seeing any. Let's remove that. And for now, we will add in the strategic planning of Joanne Johnson at the Water Bureau. Okay. And I'm just gonna double check if there's any other announcements that I missed. Amy and Eliza, anything you want to announce?
I think we're good till the 20th.
Okay.
I'll follow up in an email a little bit about the co-chair stuff.
Okay, sounds good. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Everyone enjoy the beautiful summer weather. If you can, get outside, take deep breaths. And I will see you all at May 20th. All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you, Dory.
everybody.
Thank you, Dory. Bye, everyone.
Bye, great job.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.
Great to hear you.